People of Reddit, what did you laugh at, only to realize it wasn't a joke? Your dad just cut his finger off with a push mower. A friend's grandmother died. When I asked how she died, she said she choked on a piece of banana. One of my best friends, a twin, in college told me she was pregnant. She had played jokes on me before, so I laughed and said, "No ducking way, you're the smart one." A girl writhing around on the ground at a festival. I thought it was performance art. She was actually having a really bad acid trip and paramedics were rushing over. The looks from her friends as I lamely tried to explain myself will haunt my dreams. I was chatting with an elderly security guard at the movies and he was talking about having a degree he never used. He said, "Now, I only use it to decorate my bedroom wall." I laughed and he said, "You laugh now. I laugh about it sometimes, but I cry most of the time." I was at a pirate themed costume party and a woman was dressed as the coin from the first Pirates of the Caribbean. The costume was pretty big. You could only see her head and legs. So I shouted across the room, "Hey, it looks like you have no arms," to which she replied that she didn't. I laughed it off thinking she was joking. Nope, she literally had no arms. I've never been more mortified in my life. I work at a non-profit. My boss needed to fill a position, so he sent me to a job fair to collect some resumes. I found Kevin, a young guy full of energy and enthusiasm with over a decade of fundraising experience. Me. "So, when is Kevin starting?" Boss, "Actually, I hired someone else." Me. "Haha. Seriously, when is Kevin starting?" But it wasn't a joke. Boss hired a dim-witted, sleepy old guy with no discernible skills. I guess he felt they had more in common. 3 years later, the old guy got fired for never actually finishing a single project. When I first met my best friend at uni, she showed me a picture of her brother. I laughed really hard at the picture and said, "Why is he pulling such a silly face? He's got Down syndrome." Cringe. I once introduced myself to a gentleman who said, "My name is X. or you can call me Grey Wolf," and I kinda snorted but then kinda instantly realized, "Oh, you're part native, aren't you?" Yup. To be fair, however, this was in the Space Coast of Florida. One time I walked into my school and I looked at my friend who was very upset and said, "What happened? Your cat died?" It's an Italian saying, and he said, "No, my mom did." I laughed for a while because he was one to make those type of jokes. Little did I know. You can't wear ponchos on campus anymore because we've decided it could possibly be offensive to someone at a student union meeting. It was the pause before someone. The entire lecture theater took it as a funny joke about political correctness. She was deadly serious. I was taking a cave tour in West Virginia and at one point the tour guide said scientists believe that these markings on the rocks were made by erosion from rainfall over time. But we know that it was actually created by the waters from Noah's flood. I laughed unpleasantly and involuntarily, and the guide glared at me for the rest of the trip. I have a slight hearing problem, which has led to several awkward faux pas situations. The worst one was when I was a cashier at Walgreens. A woman came up to pay and I asked how she was doing and she replied with a sigh and "Oh, I just found out." I couldn't hear the second part, so I asked her to repeat. I still couldn't hear the second part and I didn't want to make her keep repeating. But her delivery sounded like a dry joke, so I just politely laughed. She gave me the dirtiest look and said, "What's so funny about my husband having cancer?" I definitely heard her that time. I used to have lunch with this guy I worked with. We became really good friends. All of a sudden he stopped coming to my office. I asked him why and he told me it was because I think you have a crush on me and you make me very uncomfortable. I am also a guy who is 12 years younger than him. He is very ugly and has cerebral palsy. I laughed, then I realized he was serious. He has an extremely jealous wife who put all these weird thoughts in his head. As soon as I realized he wasn't joking, I said, "Do you realize how ugly you are?" I was in shock and it just came out. I felt really bad. Redacted. Because holy it, this blew up. A guy said that anyone who takes any kind of drug should be killed by the government. I laughed and he said, "No, seriously. It would solve the problem." Going to middle school and needing to make a phone call home. Before I had a cell phone, From the office, the secretary said, "It'll cost you 50 cents. I laughed. She didn't. That was the moment I realized that despite being a good kid, adults suddenly wouldn't like or trust me simply because I was in middle school. It was jarring. I was a preteen at Bible camp and one of the leaders was sharing the story of his upbringing. It got real intense and he ended that intense part of the story with, "And now my brother is an alcoholic." His tone and the timing was rather comedic and I thought he was doing that to break some tension, and without thinking anything else of it, I let out a huge, organic HA. Everyone turned to look at me. I tried to fake a coughing fit to play it off. Don't think it was very convincing. A young lady in the choir who had beautiful dark hair, lustrous, long Italian, arrived at rehearsal as a blonde. Thanks to this really fake looking wig she had on over her natural hair. It screamed fake wig and looked like she was trying to be funny, just to bring a little light humor to rehearsal. One of the tenors asked, "Did you get that wig from Sears?" She said, "Actually, yes." At which point everyone laughed. Turns out it was really true. She did get the wig from Sears, and she thought it looked great, whereas everyone else thought it looked so unnatural and wrong on her. I was pretty ignorant in high school, and our friend group was one that would bust each other all the time without many boundaries. A friend was telling us about how his father died of breast cancer at the lunch table. I thought he was messing with me, so I kept laughing, telling him to quit his bullet. Me, being a ducking dumb teenager, assumed only women could get breast cancer, and just rolled my eyes when he kept saying it was true. This proceeded for the entire lunch period. It wasn't until after lunch period was over and someone else came up to me and confirmed the fact that I realized what a gigantic asshole I had just been. Okay, so I was at my best friend's high school grad party at his house, and he invited some of his other friends not from our school to come too. I always goofed around in high school and today felt like any other day. This kid, who was nicknamed Beaters, and I were getting along fine when I noticed some type of string hanging from his waist belt. I couldn't really make out what it was, so I assumed it was a tag to his clothes or something similar. Being an immature, unaware high schooler, I thought nothing of the context of where we were, or thinking anything would be inappropriate for me to crack a remark or joke. I took his string and started tugging on it and even asked, "Lol, what is this? Your stupid inflatable pants?" He looked down and didn't give the reaction I was hoping, and he turned and said, "No, jackass. It's actually my insulin pump." Which is where I found out his name wasn't Beaties. It was Beats. You know, short for diabetes. My brother's girlfriend, when she realized that Cubans came from Cuba, and Haitians come from Haiti and so on and so forth. A girl that wanted to become our new flatmate. When asked what her hobbies were, "I enjoy sleeping." I laughed. She didn't. "Good morning, mom. We've just arrested your husband for statutory rape. Did you know your husband was having an affair with one of his female students?" "Yeah, it wasn't a joke." While watching Snow White and the Huntsman in the theater, there is a scene where a magical deer or unicorn or something like that shows up and stands there all majestic like, then gets shot with an arrow and keels over. I burst out laughing and my sisters looked at me in disgust. "My brother got his face blown off by a shotgun," she said. For some reason, my brain immediately short-circuited and I thought of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Daffy Duck getting shot in the face, his duck bill landing some few feet away. I laughed. The girl looked at me in horror. I tried to explain. I failed. Please keep in mind, I was, like, 11. Back when I lived in a foster group home, me and some of the older guys were playing on the Xbox. One of my foster brothers stopped and started making funny faces at me. He was a chill guy and we got along well and joked together, so I laughed and made faces back. He was having a seizure. This video, an event which I watched live, where a video game streamer named Vinny is exploring a long abandoned MMO from the 90s named Active Worlds. The game was similar to Second Life, in that you could make custom worlds to roleplay in. Vinny was exploring some medieval goblin village, talking about how sad it was to see months of hard work left to rot because it's only virtual. Suddenly, he's approached by a stranger who speaks only in character. The man can open gates that only moderators are able to open. He seems to know his way around town, and would often repeat phrases or completely ignore what Vinny was typing. Vinny spent most of the video screwing around with the NPC, eventually getting into the IP as a joke. It's only at the end of the video that the man utters the phrase Vinny and disconnects. This wasn't just a fan. This was an old moderator of the server who had gotten word that a popular streamer was checking it out decades later. I can't imagine anything creepier than exploring an abandoned place and some guy doing this. Your sister is 10 weeks pregnant. My cousin dated a girl named Fear. I laughed and she got pissed. Whoops. One of my most uptight friends is a Reiki healer. When she first told me, I burst into a fit of laughter. I thought she was making fun of herself. She was serious. In my master's degree course some 14 years ago, I first heard the term Asperger's and busted out laughing thinking someone was kidding and saying Asperger as a joke. True story. When I was a high school freshman, there was a girl in my class who said I have never kissed a boy and wouldn't unless we're married because I don't want to get pregnant from the kiss. I immediately laughed until I saw her confused look and realized she's being serious. That was the first time I truly thought the US education system has failed us. I was chatting with a future Tinder date and he was an actor. I asked him how he got into it. I broke my leg while being the quarterback in high school and tried out for the musical and got the leading role. How nice. What really happened? That's what really happened. I don't think I've ever met someone who had quite as wholesome of a life as he did. 2 years ago today, I was getting the kids ready to go to a local water park. My husband was taking out the trash. His phone rang. I answered. His mom, who was supposed to be meeting us at the water park, said she needed to talk to my husband immediately. He walked in the door at that moment. I handed him the phone. A minute goes by and he says, "I'll be right there," and drops his phone on the table. He looked at the ceiling and said, "My sister is dead." I was thinking he meant like, she got in trouble in the OMG my parents are going to kill me type way, since he said it so calmly. So I grinned at him and said, "What did she do?" Then he said she overdosed.